personal history of associated autoimmune disease was found in 20% of the patients. The differential diagnosis is all of this, and we ruled out all these diseases. And see the pictures. This is really strange picture. This is the face. They are highly similar, all of them. I have other pictures probably. Have you seen patients like this? And it's always the same pictures. So we eliminate leprosy because there is no sign of hypoesthesia. Biopsies, no polymorphous infiltrate, especially macrophage granuloma. CTCL was eliminated. Facial seborrheic involvement is uncommon, and stability over time. Some patients have the disease for more than 10 years, not having for mycosis fungoides. But still now, I believe that this disease is probably an indolent form of mycosis fungoides because the depigmentation comes very late after years and years. We got biopsies from this patient with hypopigmented maculas and surrounding healthy skin. You can see here that melanin is decreasing in the areas because this is on the border of a lesion. So you can see there you have less melanin, and here that you have more melanin. This is another biopsy, but this time it's melan A, and so you can see that here you have melanocyte, and you have areas. Don't forget that these patients are black. Normally, the density of melanocyte in all skin types is the same, but it is more than this. And here you can see that there are areas where you don't have any melanocyte. No sign of inflammation, no scarring, no hypoesthesia, nor clear pronounced skin infiltration. And Woodland confirmed the hypopigmentation and the absence of fluorescence. Leukotrichia was absent in all patients. So when we treat these patients, when this article was published, I said that it is poorly responsive to therapy. But now, I have at least 10 patients that have been treated with NBU, VB, and tacrolimus, and they respond well to this therapy, to this combination. And this is another thing that is strange for me because I strongly believe that this is not vitiligo, and the use of tacrolimus didn't trigger mycosis fungoides in these patients. So what we are doing now is that we are collecting more cases. We are collecting biopsies and frozen biopsies to see if we can have markers of mycosis fungoides, and if we can differentiate between mycosis fungoides and these patients. This is another form of vitiligo that we have recently described. I think this is very interesting because it bridges vitiligo and alopecia areata. I have seen these patients over the past 10 years. This is more a rare form of the disease. We sought to characterize these patients. You will see. The first case that I have seen was this young boy that was an African native boy that was coming from Burundi to my clinic. And when he came to me, I was really surprised by the whitening of all his eyelashes. And when you look carefully at the hairs, because he was becoming puber at that time, all the hair were white. And he had this whitening of the hairs, also of the skull. And what was for me really, really surprising is that there was a history of premature hair graying in 4 maternal aunts, and in his maternal grandmother, and in his mother as well. When you do a biopsy, here, what we see is the loss of melanosome in the follicle. We did Fontana-Masson stain with the loss of melanin pigment in the hair follicle, and the melan A, the loss of melanocytes in hair follicle. So I looked at the literature and I saw this paper of sudden or rapid whitening of the hair that arrived in one night, over the night, rapid whitening of the scalp over 3 weeks here, but we will see another case, a band along the occiput with minimal hair fall, no appearance of bald patches, 17 months later the pigmented patch on the arms, hand, neck, and probably that this was the first case of follicular vitiligo that was described. In our cohort of patients, the mean age was 48 years. Mean age at onset of vitiligo was 35 years, all males. Skin phototypes 3 to 4. Personal medical history, alopecia areata in one patient, hello nevi, and thyroid disease we have none. But when we look at premature hair graying, 3 of them, plus the patient themselves, had a premature hair graying history, and for one case it was not clear, because premature hair graying is normally that you have half of your hair whitened before the age of 30. And in one patient it was not clear, this story. And see the patients, they are also highly similar. You have progressive and early whitening of body and scalp hairs that occurred 5 years following the excision of hal nevi in this patient. And oral mini pearls, corticosteroids, and NBUVB, we have poor response, but this is not surprising as the hair follicle reservoir was involved. This is another patient, and it's always the same pictures. But it is more clear, you will see in the, this is also another patient. And the whitening comes really quickly. And you see here the patches of white hairs. For me, I don't know how we can rule out alopecia areata in these patients. It's a kind of strange situation. And this case was for me the one that helps me to understand, because I saw this boy at the beginning, really at the beginning of his disease. And what we can see in some areas here, you have whitening of the hairs, but still he has no whitening of the skin. The whitening of the skin came after the whitening of the hairs. He is 17 years old. Do you see his hairs, his scalp hairs? So we did other biopsies, and what we saw, we did c-KIT and HMB45. We also stained positive for chemase, and we see this major infiltration here at the basis of the hair follicle, which we further characterize. Maybe it's better on this picture, I don't know, the infiltrate. So the leukotrichia has traditionally been associated with segmental vitiligo, not with non-segmental vitiligo. And classically, even with when leukotrichia is present, skin depigmentation would still predominate in classical vitiligo, but not in this type of vitiligo. The whitening of the hair are being considered as a sign of melanocyte depletion in the outer windshield. Another case that I have seen in the literature, the story of this woman who had overnight graying. That is a phenomenon that you can see in alopecia areata. She had no concomitant vitiligo, but she is strangely close to our patients. And just this patient that I followed up for vitiligo and who had alopecia areata for years, and you see the regrowth of the hair were white, and it stays white over years, because when I saw her, she had alopecia areata when she was a child, and the hair remained white over the years. And when we look at this section, the chemase is staining normally for mastocyte, and we think that the infiltrate was mainly mastocyte at the basis of in the outer tissue, which is not something that is usual in vitiligo. Mastocytes are more seen normally in alopecia areata. Another strange story also that was published in the JAD in 2000 is the story of migratory foliosis, which is a first alopecia areata. So normally the hair follicle is a zone, is a privileged zone, an immune privileged zone that protect the hair follicle epithelial stem with the reservoir. So is there a collapse of this immune privileged follicular vitiligo? We think that yes, and probably that there is a common antigen between alopecia areata and vitiligo, and some form, at least this form of vitiligo, which is a protein of the melanocytes. We can characterize it for the moment, but we strongly believe in this story. This would involve highly immunogenic pigment production related antigens without occurrence of alopecia. A different microenvironment and milieu is needed for alopecia to occur, probably. What about premature hair graying? In our cohort of patients, we had 3 sure history of premature hair graying, and most of our patients have hair graying. Vitiligo and premature hair graying are both associated with other autoimmune diseases. And the pathogenesis of premature hair graying, now it is seen to be an early reduction of interogenous activity within hair bulbs melanocytes, with an inappropriate melanocyte, cortical melanocyte interaction, and a defective migration of this melanocyte into hair bulb. So possible common factor of pathogenesis was the ROS, the reactive oxygen species, and impaired handling of the large amount of loss generated during the melanocytic activity of the bulb, with an involvement of the immune pathway. So just to discuss this, I think this is really an overlap between alopecia areata and vitiligo, both diseases being driven by Th1. So the conclusion is there is still work to do to completely describe endophenotypes of vitiligo, and there is also reasons to stay curious about the patient, to always listen to the patient, to always look carefully at your patients, and to have the eye to distinguish between the different forms, because it can help us to bridge vitiligo with other autoimmune conditions. Probably that we will need more ultrastructural study to